ভালোবাসি ও মা ফাগুনে তোর আমের মনে ঘানে পাগল করে মরি হায় হায় রে ও মা ফাগুনে তোর আমের মনে ঘানে পাগল করে ও মা ঘানে তোর ভরা খেতে কি দেখেছি আমি কি দেখেছি মধুর হাসি সোনার বাংলা আমি তোমায় ভালোবাসি কি শোভা কি ছায়া গো কি স্নেহ কি মায়া গো কি আঁচল বিছায়েছ বটের মূলে নদীর কূলে কূলে মা তোর মুখের বাণী আমার কানে লাগে সুধার মতো মনে হায় হায় রে মা তোর মুখের বাণী আমার কানে লাগে সুধার মতো মা তোর বদন খানি মলিন হলে আমি নয়ন ও মা আমি নয়ন জলে ভাসি সোনার বাংলা আমি তোমায় ভালোবাসি থ্যাংক ইউ এভরিওয়ান
Thank you, Rafia and Zaima. Please kindly be seated. Distinguished speakers, Dr. Rubana Haq and Mr. Said Nasim Monzoor, Chairman, Board of Trustees, IUB, Mr. Abdul Hai Sharkar, members of the Board of Trustees, members of the ESDCDT, Vice Chancellor, IUB, Professor Tanvir Hassan, PhD, Pro Vice Chancellor, IUB, Professor Niaz Ahmed Khan, Deans, Senior Administrators, Faculty, Staff, and most importantly, our students. Excuse me. Ladies and gentlemen, today is an exciting day for the School of Business and Entrepreneurship. I am Mehrun Ahmed, Dean of School of Business and Entrepreneurship, SBE. It is my distinct pleasure and privilege to welcome you all to the first symposium organized by SBE after the COVID-19 pandemic. The theme of the symposium today is, what roles can the universities play to mitigate the existing skill gaps in the industry? Bangladesh, often dubbed as the development miracle, has grown almost 56 times in the last 5 decades. It is on the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution, which will necessitate automation, total industrial transformation, and this will lead to serious disruptions in the traditional labor market. Being a labor economist, I can't resist to share some data with you. Our labor force, which stands at 69 million, is growing at a pace of 2.2% per annum, while 38.6% of our graduates remain unemployed. This indicates there is a serious skills mismatch. Consequently, foreigners are filling in this gap, leading to substantial remittance outflow from Bangladesh. We are losing on potential investment. Our graduates are struggling in the job market as our conventional education system lacks skill orientation in line with the industry demand. To top that, we will not be able to reap the demographic dividend efficiently if we do not smartly invest in our human capital. Thus, this symposium is of extreme importance for SBE and IUB. Today, we will learn from two prominent global business leaders who also have close ties with the academia. I would now like to request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, of IUB, Professor Tanvir Hassan, PhD, to come up on stage and share his views and deliver his welcoming remarks. Thank you.
Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. Rubana Haq, Vice Chancellor for Asian University for Women, Mr. Syed Nasim Manzoor, Managing Director for Apex Footwear Limited, Honorable BOT members, Honorable Chair of the Board of Trustees, Mr. Abdul Hai Sharkar, my respected fellow colleagues and dear students, good morning and Assalamu alaikum. First and foremost, I want to thank the School of Business and Entrepreneurship, and specifically Dean Mehroon Ahmed for organizing this seminar on this very important topic, which is of utmost importance against the backdrop of SDG goals and the Vision 2041. As some of you know, I came back to Bangladesh after 35 years. A huge difference between the Bangladesh I left in the 80s and the Bangladesh today. The country is humming, I can tell. And if I may share, it feels like China in the 90s. Everywhere I go, every part of the country I go, the country is humming, which is a good news. Now, during these 35 years, I did visit Bangladesh regularly, but I was not engaged, so to speak, to be honest. And during my annual trips, I had the opportunity to visit different types of manufacturing companies, specifically garments factories owned by my childhood friends, mostly located in EPZs or specialized economic zones. But for full disclosure, I did not visit those factories with any research interest. Some wonderful golf courses in this country have close proximity to these economic zones. And that's what drove me there, and I became their guest, and I had privy to their garments factories and other manufacturing companies. I have some observations that I took away from my almost annual trips to some of these factories. Before I do so, I wanted to put up some macroeconomic data. Garments industry is a key player to the development of Bangladesh. 80% of the garment workers are female. Female students are topping the grades at the SSC, HSC, and O and A levels. Female students are topping the grades at both public and private universities. If you look at the demographic breakdown in the different age group, you'll see how critical it is to have the female segment of the population fully engaged in the national development. Finally, we are all aware of our obligations toward fulfilling SDG goals and the Vision 2041 as developed by the government of Bangladesh. Now, let's turn to some of my general observations. With the economic prosperity Bangladesh has, I think what I observe from my non-scientific observation, so to speak, that the general compensation level for people has gone up. But I'm not sure if the higher pay necessarily reflects higher competency, because with rising tides, all boats rise. And what is driving the tide is the garments and remittance. So I think the general pay structure has benefited, but again, I am not sure if it commensurates with the competency level. Second, 80% of the workers in the garments sector, which is the driving engine of this country, are female, but you will seldom see any female manager or very few female manager, even small supervisors in lower level. This is again talking from my own experiences visiting several factories over the last decades. This reminded me of the MFI sector. If you recall, 20 years ago or so, when the MFI sector was booming, They were servicing female clients primarily, but very seldom you'd see any female manager or a female loan officer. I think the sector as a whole, the MFI sector, has taken steps to mitigate those problems, and you will see some difference, although they have a long way to go. Next comes the highly paid expatriate workers, which I ran into them from, I would say I started seeing them from about 20 years ago, that more and more expatriate workers are holding the managerial position. I have had conversation on a private basis with some of my friends whose factories I was visiting as to what's driving this. And you have heard that I think it's approximately $5 billion that gets out of the system because of this expatriate employment in the country. Having said all these, the universities have a role to play in keeping up with the changing demand from the industry. We must train our students adequately to jump into new territories. The world is dynamic. Remember, some of the jobs that existed during my lifetime no longer exist. I still recall calling my mom from States using an operator. There are famous heart-wrenching songs by Jim Croce and others on operators. Operators do not exist anymore. I'm just giving you one example. So I'm telling the students that as you grow older, you'll find some of the traditional jobs that you're used to hearing about no longer exists. So you need to be trained enough and have enough technical savviness to adapt to the changing requirements of the industry. Now let's turn to IUB. What are we doing for this? For a starter, I would like to share a news that this is the 4th consecutive semester since when I started in March 2021, we had 56% headcount in new enrollment. And since then, this is the beginning of the 4th semester. And I'm very pleased to inform you all on behalf of the management and the students, to everybody, that this is the 4th consecutive record IUB enrollment in its history. Each time we surpassed the previous semester's enrollment. I think we are in a very optimal position now. We'll have to engage in a dialogue with the Board of Trustees to see where the optimal size should be. We want our students to have a strong liberal arts training, to be tech savvy, environmentally responsible, and globally conscious citizens. We are the first university, possibly on the planet, to require all incoming IB students to have coding skills. And they will be asked to do either Python or R. Even if you're English major, you have to sit through the coding classes, because 10 years from now, even in liberal arts, you won't be able to finish your graduate school without any coding exposure, any coding skills. So we are doing it in phases. We are in the middle of it, and we hope to have a global celebration once we are 2/3 into the process and rightfully claim to be the first university on this planet to require every student to have basic coding competency. So I am very pleased about it, and I'm waiting for that celebration to happen soon. We also drove to increase our female student body. As each semester progressed, we had a larger number of female students enrolling into IUB. And there are good reasons to go after the female students, as I presented with the data before. And right now, about 44% of our students are female. And right after I came as a vice chancellor last year, I surveyed my girls to see how they feel about the campus and the environment. Because to me, inclusive development and some other environmental support, so to speak, for lack of a better word, is more important sometimes than the classroom experience for a person to succeed. So when I did the survey, I found that the girls don't feel very much part of the community, and they don't have the leadership in activities. According to the survey, I listened to their survey, and they wanted martial art coaches for their safety. We got the award-winning martial art coach who will resume activities in July or August. They wanted a yoga studio. We built a new yoga studio and a yoga coach will be in place from July or August. They wanted more prayer space, so we created more prayer space for the females. And by the way, some of these facilities that we are talking to can be used by the boys too, because yoga, for example, is a unisex sport. So I don't think necessarily that it's for girls only. We are also announced to have the first female basketball team in the country. We are building a new complex diagonally across the entrance, where you'll see has a multi-purpose court. We'll have it in place by the end of the year. You can do futsal, you can do badminton, you can do tennis, you can do basketball. And I was pleasantly surprised that the girls wanted to play basketball. I thought they would opt for badminton or something. But again, we are at it, and I told my potential coach that I want my girls to be ready playing teams from Assam and other places. If they are not ready, you're in trouble. And she assured me, as long as we can get some tall girls, we can compete properly. So we have also emphasis on soft skill developments. That's a very important missing link sometimes. We are now holding mandatory grooming sessions, elevator speech competitions, and meaningful strategic internship programs, student support services, and emphasis on a third language skill. We already have French and Mandarin going. We recently were in the process of getting Koreans, and then in the immediate short run, we're hoping to get Japanese courses for our students. So the emphasis is on a third language beyond Bangla and English, because that's what would be needed in the changing world 10 years, 20 years from now. So going forward, what is it that we are getting out of this seminar? I know I'm going a little long. Please bear with me. Because I wanted to make this symposium not just about talks, but into action items. Because we have the privilege of having a vice chancellor, sitting vice chancellor here. Then we have a business person sitting here who is also involved with an university and also with a trade body. So this is a time to go beyond a traditional symposium where we just talk. Rather, we can talk about some action items, and I would like to hear from you all on that. So let this be the beginning of a series of dialogues between at least, let's say, Asian University for Women, IUB, and MCCCI, and BRAC maybe. The goal is to hash out the list of skill sets and general competency requirements. And the idea is to embed them into the curriculum. It can be done on a pilot basis. It can be done as a group of consortium of universities to do so. That way, this will have a policy impact, and other universities can follow. So I recommend and I call upon AUW, MCCI, and BRAC, and possibly BGMEA to form a nucleus to continue this conversation forward so that we can have some meaningful action items beyond just talking about it, and something can be expected in a 3-4 year term when you have the first batch out under this set of new rules. With that, I would stop, and I look forward to listening to our respected guests and learn from them. Much appreciate your patience with my rather long speech. Thank you all. Joy Bangla.
Thank you, sir, for your thoughtful comments and suggestions. I would now like to request Honorable Chair of the BOT, Mr. Abdul Hai Sarkar, to inspire us with his remarks.
First of all, I'd like to extend a warm congratulations to Dr. Rumana Haq for being the Vice Chancellor of Chittagong Women University. and also Nasim Mundur. He is like my nephew because we had been working together with his father in Dubai. Nasim Mundur also very well established and very promising business personality in the society now, and he has a very big agenda to go ahead. I'm sure he can address that very nicely. And in the front row, sitting all my good friends, my colleague, Tohid Samath, Ashad Chaudhary, and other distinguished member of the trustees. And it is my pleasure to have the opportunity to speak few word in this symposium organized by Dr. Mehrun, our business school, and it is a timely initiative to address this problem. It is a very long-standing problem to mitigate the gap between the industry as well as the tertiary institutions. So what we need is that we have to endeavor our utmost to develop some sort of interaction where we can really reduce the gap exist for a long time in the academic as well as in the business sector. So actually, the curriculum we are now teaching is mostly very traditional, very long, without much changes, with the change of the time, change of the global situation. So it is a right team initiative to address and try to mitigate the problem, because, you know, as all of us know, that many of the symposiums, seminars organized by, on this issue, organized by trade bodies, autonomous bodies, government agencies, but end of the day, the result remain very insignificant outcome of those seminars. Actually, we have a very big skill gap. Actually, the demand of the industry is different. Right now, we have also a very big shortage of skilled people to address our latest situation, and for which we regard to give a drive. And I am sure today's speaker will really speak about it. And this kind of process should be continuous. You know, if we just end up with a seminar and finish it, then it come up that much, not that much of benefit to the society. So it should be an ongoing process. This kind of visibility demand of the time, because this process should continue. All this symposium seminar is over. I'm sure that we should keep the continuity so that we can reduce the gap between the academia as well as the industry. Those are the main results, where our graduates will be absorbed after completion of their graduation. So, in the process of teaching our graduates, or imparting teaching to our graduates, to our students, we should have a regular interaction with the practical part of the education that they are learning, so that if they remain tasked with the ongoing situation in the industry as well as various sectors, even garment sector and other also manpower, and most of the manpower is sending outside very unskilled, and our evidence come from abroad, maybe a number 6 or 7, compared to Pakistan, Philippines, and India. This reason being because most of the people is sent abroad is do the odd job, and that bring very small amount of return from that. So that is why if we can really create a situation where we can impart and create trained manpower, and that can bring better result for us. At the same time, in garment sector, we have a lot of exporters coming from outside to fill the gap in our what should I call this? Our gap, export gap in various areas, for which we have to pay lion's share of our foundation's earning to the overseas export and technicians coming here to fill up the gap of our scarcity of experienced people. So I think we should create a situation where all faculty members to gain knowledge about current and relevant industry practices to make the curriculum more progressive, practical, and aligned to the industry requirements. So I don't like to prolong much my space, but one thing I like to mention here that we should have some sort of task force comprising maybe people from the Ministry of Education, also Industry Collaboration, academia, and also the industrial people. If we really keep the continuity of this kind of symposium and seminars outcome for the benefit of the country. With this few words, I once again extend my very warm congratulations to Dr. Mehron for this timely initiative. At the same time, today's speaker, she is a very renowned personality, and she brought a lot of, she actually he did a lot of things for the BGMA, government head Dr. Rubana Haq, and he has been able to convey the Western world that for compliance issue, they want the compliance, but never pay for the compliance. So she did a great job in there. At least she has been able to convert those messages to the Western world, also the Western think tank. I hope they can contribute much more, and I like to hear more than what I like to speak. I don't have much to speak about it, and I want to be a very good listener of these renowned people who are going to speak out today on the subject of how to mitigate the skill gap between the industry as well as the tertiary institutions. Thank you very much once again for giving me a chance to speak few words in this August seminar. Thank you very much, and wish all the success this seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your kind and encouraging words. It is my distinct pleasure to now introduce Dr. Rubana Haq and Mr. Said Nasim Monzoor to our guests today. Dr. Haq actually doesn't need no introduction. She is currently the Vice Chancellor of Asian University for Women, where I spent 12 years of my life. She holds a PhD in English literature, a global businesswoman, a poet. She won the SARC Literary Award in 2006. She is the immediate past president of BGMEA. She is the managing director of Mohammadi Group, which began with RMG and has now diversified into software, digital distribution, real estate, power generation, and a television channel called Nagori. She is currently an associate at the Asia Center at Harvard University and an executive in residence at Stern School of Business, New York. She was featured in BBC 100 Women consecutively in 2013 and 2014. The list is endless. I'm sure she is the most Googled businesswoman in the region. I had the fortune to talk to her briefly on several occasions, and each time I left the conversation awestruck. I want to share something that Google won't tell you. She leads by setting examples. We all can imagine how busy she is, but just send her a text, and you will be utterly humbled by her unbelievable response time, which is almost immediate. This reflects her discipline, respect for others, empathy, and humbleness. To me, this is her true essence of leadership and character. She doesn't even know herself what an army of fans, followers, and disciples she has throughout the globe, and I pride myself in being one of them. Now, let's move on to our next speakers. We are really pleased that Mr. Nasim Monzoor has agreed to spend some time with us. While I was reading his bio, I actually thought it is not humanly possible to do what he does every day. And it would take hours to just list his contributions. So for the sake of time management, I'm just going to mention a few. Said Nasim Monzoor is a well-known and respected name in the business circle. He's the managing director of Apex Footwear Limited. He sits on various boards such as Apex Pharma, Apex Investment Limited, Grey Advertising Bangladesh Limited, Quantum Consumer Solutions Limited. He is also currently serving on the boards and executive committees of Pioneer Insurance Limited, Guardian Life Insurance Company, Society for Promotion of Bangladesh Art, and Friendship Hospital, etc. He is serving as the president of Leather Goods and Footwear Manufacturer and Exporters Association of Bangladesh. He served 2 terms as the president of MCCI. He is in the board of trustees of BRAC Universities. He teaches international business at IBA Dhaka University. He was selected to join the Asia 21 Young Leaders Summit, Kuala Lumpur, in November 2009, and the Global Forbes CEO Forum in Dubai in 2012. He completed his BSc Economics and Entrepreneurial Management from Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania. I had the good fortune to meet him briefly at IUB last year. When I requested him if he would kindly speak to our students at some point, he immediately agreed without any hesitation. Lastly, I want to mention on the back of his visiting card, it reads, "Born in Bangladesh, born around the world." Serendipitously, this is exactly what we want for our students, trained at IUB, capable of facing challenges around the globe. We are really honored that both of you are here with us today. Both of you, I would invite you to come on stage and discuss the critical issues that are facing our industry today in terms of the labor employment. And you will take questions from the audience and also from online. Thank you.
This is going to be fun.
So do we thank Mehroon for an extremely embarrassing, long introduction? So no thanks to you, Mehroon. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Board of Trustees, Nasim, students, of course, who shouldn't be clapping when national anthems are basically performed. So we don't clap when national anthem goes on, okay? That's something that we must all learn. Okay, Nasim, over to you. Do you want to start the...
Yeah, thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Of course, to the chair of the trustee board, the past chair, honorable trustees, the vice chancellor, pro VC, dean, faculty members, and most importantly, the students of IUB. Rubanappa and I were actually not sure what the format was going to be, and we kind of hijacked the format because we were asked to do PowerPoint, and we said we are not going to do PowerPoint because we think PowerPoint is overdone. So with your permission and the permission of the board and the trustees and the dean, we would like to actually have a conversation. So we are going to ask each other some questions, and then we're going to try and answer them. We hope to be able to continue this for 30 minutes, maximum 40, and then open it up for questions and answers, because I think that's much more interesting than listening to certainly myself talk. But it is indeed a great privilege and an honor, if I may say, to be sitting here with Dr. Rubana Haq. So I'm going to start with a question for the audience. We all know who Dr. Rubana Haq is, right? Can anyone tell me what her PhD subject is? Somebody not from the faculty, a student member.
It's too difficult. I'll
No. I'm going to stop you. One person. You all knew she was coming here. One person tell me what was her subject. Okay. Which university did she do her PhD from? Right. So this is my point. Preparation. You have a chance here today to talk to a legendary business personality who, by the way, is visiting fellow at Harvard. And we don't do our homework. I know which university your dean went to. I know which university your pro VC went to, because I Googled them and I found out. So when I meet them, we can have a conversation. So life, ladies and gentlemen, is about preparation. So if you're going to come to these interviews and expect us to hire you, do your homework. So I'm going to start off with that slightly provocative tone and say, ask Dr. Rubanappa to me, for me, if I may, that what is the single biggest thing that we look for when we hire today, when we talk about employability? Over to you, Rubanappa.
You know, the other day I was just reading up, and there was a very disturbing news, and it said, you know, there's a competition where you speak the truth, you give the right answer, and then you give seemingly right answers. So there's truth, and there's seemingly truths, and you can win, even if the answer is not correct. So, you know, Naseem, we're now living in an era where perceptions rule, cancel cultures rule, and not necessarily truth all the time. So in a post-truth world, it's difficult to assess candidates when they actually come in front of us. Yes, there is a gap between your education and employability. For us, it's difficult to pick the best. And I think what we look for when we interview anyone is the spirit, the eagerness to be engaged, the eagerness to learn and not teach. You know, very often we teach and then we forget to learn. So if you come in front of us and if you're answering questions, curiosity is something we look for. Spirit is something we look for. We want to see you alive with curiosity. For me, those are very, very important. I mean, apart from just credentials, I think these are things we look for.
As Professor Niaz said, 38.6% of graduates are unemployed in this country. For your information, people with the lowest level of education or no education are fully employed. And people with a tertiary level of education like yourselves from this fine institution and others are almost 40% unemployed. So if we talk about this great economic development that Professor Niaz talked about, an economy that grew 56 times since independence, yet you have this dichotomy. Let's talk about the single, in my opinion, single transformational industry of Bangladesh, the ready-made garments industry, which as BGMEA, you know, Dr. Rubana Haq led as our first president, woman president, but we don't talk about women president, we talk about president. One of the conversations we were having while we were listening to everybody was also words. Do we say girls and boys? Do we say men and women? Do we say male and female? These are the new languages that Rubana Appa will talk about, I'm sure, but I'm going to talk a little bit about RMG. We get a lot of mixed news about RMG. But a couple of things I would like to set the stage. If there is an industry that has branded Bangladesh and put Bangladesh on the global map for a couple of things. Scale, the only global scale industry in Bangladesh is actually garments. Second, labeling as a country that can produce world class. So if we talk about some of the statistics that we heard from Professor Niaz, 80% of the workers are female, not enough women workers in management, hiring expats, and therefore $5 billion flowing out. I know there are a lot of conceptions, and as you said, perceptions. Maybe, Rubana Appa, you'd like to comment on some of these perceptions and misperceptions.
Thank you, Naseem. So it's actually not 80%, it's 65% of women now are employed in ready-made garment sector. And it's a shame, but yes, we don't have enough female supervisors, as the Honorable Vice Chancellor also stated. But why don't we have them? We don't have them because there's, number one, lack of education, number two, lack of enthusiasm. Very often even, you know, female workers say, we don't want to be led by women. So, you know, it's not a hashtag he for she world, it's also a hashtag she for she world. You know, unless a woman supports another woman, it's difficult for anyone to make it out there. So, if I may just digress just for a bit, just to make it more relevant, I guess. So I am the Vice Chancellor of Asian University for Women, which is an international university, and basically we have mostly first generations there. So we have children of landless farmers, we have children from conflict zones, we have now 172 Afghan students who have braved you know, the Taliban aggression, and they've come here and they're with us. We have women from Syria, Yemen, Nepal, India, Sri Lanka, Maldives. And you know, when I look at them, they're just so resilient. I mean, they come from almost nowhere, having no clothes, literally, and having traveled to the university and probably with only 2 or 3 clothes, and then sitting through intense guidance and support, they make it. They make it there because we make it very easy for them to enter the university, but the exits are very different and difficult. So we have a three-year pre-UG courses for us to offer to the kids. So while Naseem and I were talking, he was saying that we literally deconstruct what they have learned. So it's not the university which is important, it's primary education which is important. Unfortunately, you do not get to learn the right things at the right time. When we were young, our parents used to say, foundation matters. What is foundation today? What is the core learning today that we have? What are we teaching the kids? You know, I can literally remember names of all my school teachers and college teachers. And today, when we look at most of you, and no, with no offense meant to you, you hardly know any other professors apart from the ones that you interact with. You have to be intellectually curious. So for us, even in the garment industry, if we think of, you know, taking the female labor force to the next level, there has to be a lot of intervention. And this intervention is going to come through education. So China made it in 1970s, and you know, there's probably the highest number of female entrepreneurs in China. And that has happened because the government encouraged female education. So for me, an interesting project, and I'm linking it to the industry. So in 2014, we took in around 10 garment workers and put them in Asian University for Women. And I was not in the board of trustees then. So I came up with the idea that if we could take our garment workers to the university, design a special course for them, would they be able to be educated? And you know, they're stellar. We have 70 ready-made garment workers in our university. 19 have graduated, another 20 are graduating this summer. And interestingly enough, they're just lovely, equipped to face the world. And now, one of my favorite projects is right now working with Stern on this project, NYU, and I'm turning them into entrepreneurs. So it's a guided entrepreneurship program that I'm doing. So people from Stern are actually coming in July just to turn these girls into entrepreneurs. And my job is to link them to the right financial institution which is going to support. We have buyers standby, willing to buy. We have buyers standby, willing to teach them compliance. We have partners who want to teach them production. And you know what? If that happens, it's a huge thing for us. Because from being garment worker, from being behind the sewing machine, they've gone into being educated, and then they're turning into garment owners. This is the circle that we hope to look for in all of you. You know, unless you're focused on changing things around you, unless you're focused on really shaking things around, unless you are a shaper, a true shaper of your nation, nothing else will matter. It'll be the next job, the next love, the next round of coffee in the next coffee shop, but it'll just be one of the nexts. You have to make sure that you have enough passion in yourself. So what changes you is your passion. What makes you successful is your integrity. What makes you special is your honesty. So cherish all of that. And if you do that, you will come through with flying colors. So in RMG, if we could educate our girls, that would happen. That would help. On-job training helps. I think we can come up with something more substantial. After today's discussion, we can probably devise a module, BRAC, AUW, IUB, and of course, others can all, and BGME can also come forward. And we can have a collaborative platform where we can basically devise a way to come up with a format which will encourage more people to come into garments and which will allow us to push our women those who are working behind the sewing machines to the next level. And on terms of, with regard to the sensitive he, she label, I think we should all be very, very careful in how we address each other, because it's no more just he, she, it's also they. So let's understand that, you know, the universe offers us choices, and we have to be very respectful towards how we address each other even. Thank you.
So, as we were saying, the RMG industry is also transforming. Now, as we go out and we hire, and the company that I work for works across different areas, from manufacturing to retail to advertising to digital to life insurance to services. I am struck by the lack of interest in manufacturing. And I would like to take a few minutes in line with what Rubana said about the opportunity in RMG and beyond in manufacturing in Bangladesh, and why I think this is so exciting, especially for you youngsters out there. Now, we all know that before COVID, the stresses in China, the rising labor costs, as they say, the change of focus in their industry, they're now looking more at domestic demand, domestic consumption. They're calling it a dual circulation economy. So before it was all export, export, export. Now it's about building up domestic capacity and consumption. So China, which is still known as the factory of the world, is refocusing its energies on making things for themselves, making higher quality, higher tech, moving from product to services. So there is a gap in the world. Now, this gap is so huge. The industry that I work for example, footwear, shoes, more than 65% of all the product made in the world is made in one country, that is China. Now, nobody can replace that capacity overnight, probably not in my lifetime. But significant percentage of that needs to move out, is already moving to Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and now to Bangladesh. Now, as these production sources, whether it's footwear or clothes or tents or stuffed toys or white goods move, our factories need to transform. We need to have a different quality of workforce in the factory. Let me tell you what the jobs are in these factories now. For some industrial engineers, visual merchandisers, efficiency specialists, compliance specialists, sustainability officers. Today, one of the hottest jobs you can get in the Western world is something called a Chief Sustainability Officer, CSO. But you need certain skill sets for that. Do you need to have an engineering degree in environmental science? Would help. Is it mandatory? No. What you need is what Dr. Rubana Haq mentioned, passion and intellectual curiosity. I'm an economist by training and a shoemaker by profession. I wasn't trained to make shoes, but I learned how to make shoes with my hands. We have to get our hands dirty. Now, I find, for example, IUB has an excellent environmental science school, really top-notch. And we've had the privilege of hosting some of your visits to see how we run our pollution plants. But there's no follow-up after your students come, right? Follow-up from the faculty, but follow-up also from students. I've had similar visits, if I may say, from Kuwait, from Ruet, and from Chuet. Not from Buet. I'm naming names I shouldn't, but that's me. They bombard us. Can we do a thesis? Can we do research? Can we tell us how you do your sludge management, how you're reducing your BOD, COD? We don't see that. So I think that passion and that intellectual curiosity is very important. So I actually made a list of what are the kind of jobs of the future that we will be trying to fill, as Professor Niaz said. Visual merchandisers, industrial engineers, commercialization managers. You know what a commercialization manager is? From prototype to manufacturing, how do you get there? These are high-paying, skilled jobs where you can graduate from a university and you can literally name your salary if you have the right skill set. Costing specialists, sustainability, whole area, distribution specialists, demand forecasting. We work in retail. We buy very expensive software like SAP, HANA, Oracle, and IFS. But we don't have the practitioners to use the software in the right way. We've talked about CRM specialists, customer relationship, data mining. I get a lot of requests on LinkedIn to meet me. When I have the first meeting, they don't know the first thing about data mining. So my point is that you've got to do the homework, as I just mentioned in the beginning. Material engineering, huge area. Again, you don't have to be an engineer. I think the top 10 CEOs of banks in Bangladesh have English degrees, like Dr. Rubana Haq, successful entrepreneur. So don't limit yourselves. Don't say, oh, just because I don't have an engineering degree, I can't work in sustainability or I can't work in materials. The world has changed. It helps, but it's not mandatory. Product designers, huge problem, industrial product design. I'm not sure if IUB is thinking of this. I really would request. This is an area that I'm extremely passionate about. I found this amazing company called Involute Tech. Full disclaimer, I have no investment in this company. I don't know who they are. They reached out to me on LinkedIn. Involute, Tech. Look them up. You know what they're? They're a bunch of young kids who do industrial product design for any company. Brilliant. You take them a concept, whether you want to make a prosthetic or a spare part or a shoe sole, they'll conceptualize, design, and build you a working prototype. And they charge you a fee, and they make good money. But everybody wants to be the next e-commerce platform. Everybody wants to have the same app. Please stop. We don't need any more e-com platforms. We're done. We don't need another ride-sharing app. We're done. Solve problems that we have in industry. Another huge area, which I feel very passionate, is waste management. There is a company called BD Recycle Technologies. Once again, I have no interest in these companies. I find them on the net. Young students like yourselves, some have not yet graduating, they're trying to solve problems of companies. How do you manage your waste? Because we get rated on that. So these are the kind of jobs that are also out there, right? So manufacturing, as Bangladesh rides this cusp, as Bangladesh gets some of this benefit of shift out, you need to train yourselves for these skills. So I'm going to come back to Rubanappa now and come to a point that I think, yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Naseem, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. Just to add to Naseem's list, we also need a lot of research in the industry. So you do know that Bangladesh almost exports around $34 billion. It's going to be much more this year, I guess. Just very quickly, you should know that out of this 34 or 32, we just do around $5 to $6 billion of basic t-shirts. And that hasn't changed. And you know what? We are still increasing lines, most of us, and bringing the prices down. Because as we expand our capacities and as buyers flood us with orders, the unit prices are not going up. As a result, there's less and less value addition to our product. So you see, our target is to know what is it that we should be exporting. So when I was the president of BGMEA, I tried introducing a trade digest, weekly trade digest, which would give us an idea of which markets we were exporting to and which products were more on demand. And as it seems, we ran short of researchers. So literally one person with one assistant in BGMA has difficulty handling all that data. And when we hire fresh IBA grads, they don't stay. So, in spite of knowing that the world buys $9 billion worth of just women's blouses, and which is man-made fiber-based, meaning non-cotton, how many factories in Bangladesh actually produce that? Bangladesh only exports around $300 million worth of women's blouses. That's because we don't know about the opportunity. This knowing, the lack of knowledge, this is what drives the industry to where it is. I mean, it's a great industry, we are doing well, but we could have done a lot better. We could have realigned ourselves with new markets, namely ASEAN, which is poised to be the fourth largest economy by 2030, and yet we don't have enough trade benefits with ASEAN because we are not being able to qualify even going near to RCEP or any other regional alignments because we don't know enough. Now, bright kids like you can help us find the answers. You can do the research. So research is one area I'd like to really, really emphasize on, because if you come, and then, you can also name your price. And then we wouldn't have to lose you to the next MNC. I mean, we are constantly losing our good kids to MNCs because apparently we don't pay enough, but we do. I mean, coming back to, again, the Sri Lankans, the Indians, and I shouldn't say this, that we have in our companies, and both of us have people running them. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to sit here and address you, because there's somebody very, very capable who's running it there. And why don't we have that capacity? That local capacity building hasn't happened. It hasn't happened because our English is not good enough. Our math skills are not good enough. The basics are not good enough. It's completely gone off track. So no matter what you learn in the university, if you're not constantly engaged in learning, you just won't ace ever. Just another anecdote though. Naseem and I both sit in an ICT Ministries committee called, it's an idea project idea, and we both are in the in the selection committee. And we're both tired of just choosing startups which just present the same things over and over again. It's about either it's a health tech, which is just a call center kind of a thing, or it's about offering courses. We barely see great startups coming through. And it's heartbreaking because, it's just, I mean, the way Chile did it, the Chilean concept of startups is so different than ours. That's because, Naseem also said that there's no follow-up. So constant mentoring and constant assessment, constant evaluation, tracking progression is something that we need to have. Sorry, Naseem, I guess I interrupted your chain of thought.
I think completely relevant, and to the point that I think Vice Chancellor Tanvir Hassan was saying that, and I quote him, rising tides raise all boats. And I think thank you so much for saying that. I'm going to address another elephant in the room, which is this whole MNC local, and I think for IUB not so important, but BCS conundrum that our students go through. I was at another talk the other day at the Foreign Service Academy, and there were a bunch of young Foreign Service officers from across the world, and there were 3 from Bangladesh. And one of them was an electrical engineer, undergraduate electrical, triple E, double E, and then hadn't finished masters, and has joined the Foreign Service Academy. So I said, why? He said, because, private sector, they hire and fire. I said, yes, so what's your point? No, I don't like to be hired and fired. So, well, then you lack confidence and you're not fit to be hired. Now, people, you all want to get on that plane and go to America and work for Google. You think Google hires you for life? Right? You heard the universities that we are associated with, or let's say my university mates. When they fire you, they give you 1 hour and a carton and call security and throw you out of the building. But that's okay in America. But it's not okay here. Now, my response to that is, first of all, nobody fires somebody without a reason. If they do, that's not correct, and that should not be. But if you have confidence in your abilities, you will find another job, and another job, and another job, right? So I was so disappointed in this brilliant young man who gave up an incredible career. We need more electrical engineers. Do we really need another diplomat? I will not go there, with due respect. But I think the point is that this is the kind of, the jobs that are out there and the jobs that we want are not necessarily going to match. Now, if this, as we said, salaries keep going up and competencies, as RBC has said, don't match, we will go out and find talent that we can afford. And if that talent is Mongolian or Indian or Bhutanese or Italian, so be it. Now, nobody in Bangladesh hires expatriates because we like to look good, or we feel like, oh, we are really cool because we have Bideshis on our payroll. We do it because they perform and they deliver a result at a cost that is competitive. So I think this is the point that Rubanap and I would like to make, that now what we are doing is we're actually shadowing. So we have youngsters or not so young people shadowing them, but that commitment, that preparedness is still not there. Our CEO of Apex Retail, who now runs a $100 million business, by the way, started life on the shop floor selling clothes for Marks and Spencers in Dubai. Hence, as he tells me all the time, Naseem, you will never understand retail the way I do, because I started on the shop floor. I started on a factory floor, he started on a shop floor. So this is what I mean. Youngsters, my young friends from IUB, if you're interested in retail, you want to build a fashion brand, join a retailer, become a store manager, you will understand more retail than any, no disrespect to the business school, than any MBA will teach you. Then do the MBA. Because you will understand inventory management, visual merchandising, customer relationships,